This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather, ho there, it's Jeff Connor Diamond. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, May the 26th, in the year 2000, one of the most key games of all time happened. Of course, you see the screen grab, you know exactly what this game entails. But let's not talk about that for now. Let's talk about the road to the 2000 Stanley Cup playoffs. This was huge and all that. It was huge for the purists who loved the original six era, who went through the original six era with 6 teams: Toronto, Montreal, Chicago, Detroit, New York, and Boston. For the first time in history, only 2 of the original 6 teams made the playoffs. That was Toronto and Detroit. 2 out of 6. It had never been that bad of a thing. Even post 1967, there was at least 3 teams making it to the playoffs and all that. It would happen again the next year with Toronto and Detroit being the only original 6 teams in. 2007, 2018, and 2019 were the only other times that only 2 out of 6 original teams, 6 teams made the playoffs. But thankfully, never below 2. It was actually the first time ever that the Boston Bruins and Montreal Canadiens both missed the playoffs at the same time. Of course, it would be weird that you have a Stanley Cup without Boston and Montreal. You would at least have one of these teams. And for the first time in a while, both conference finals went to Game 7. This would not happen again for 15 years. So Philly were the 1 seed out of the East. They would take on the Buffalo Sabres, easily beat them in 5, despite Buffalo having Dominik Hasek in the net. And in the conference semis against their rivals, their state rivals, the Pittsburgh Penguins, they beat them in 6. That wasn't the big part of that series. That series did include the quintuple overtime spin of Keith Primo, the much maligned centerman, as Steve Levy on ESPN said. And he scored, and the Flyers ended up winning that series in 6. The Devils were the 4th seed. They swept through Florida. They took on the number 3 seed Toronto Maple Leafs. And in a normal world, Toronto would easily take care of the Devils and go into the finals, conference finals. But the Devils used their neutral zone defense, and of course, Ty Domi, can't remember. I think it was 2001. No, it was 2001 when he hurt Scott Niedermayer just before the end of the game, and it cost him dearly. But yeah, the Devil Dogs were facing Philly. In the West, Dallas were the Western Conference champions. While they were the 2 seed, Dallas took care of Edmonton in 5, San Jose in 5, but Colorado, the spunky Colorado team of my man Joe Patrick Waddle too, won it. The 1 seed St. Louis Blues were good. They were the President's Trophy winners for best team in the NHL, but they shockingly lost to San Jose in 7 games. And it was a 3-1 series deficit that the Sharks overcame. I think it was a 3-1 series lead. I remember something like that. Or am I wrong? Now the Sharks were up 3-1, other way around, and the Blues almost came back from that. But we can't forget about Roman Turek jumping up in the air trying to deflect the puck, but deflected the puck in his own net in Game 7. That's how the Sharks shocked the Blues. So the Flyers and Devils would meet in the conference final. This would be the 3rd time these 2 teams would meet in the playoffs. Of course, this is 2000. So anyway, the Devils were in deep trouble. They were down 3-1. Brian Boucher was playing lights out, including having a puck lodged in his mask in, I think, Game 3. It didn't work. Larry Robinson, Kitchener, who took over for Robbie Ftorek 8 games from the end of 8 games before the end of the regular season, got angry, and on the Devils team bus, he laid into everybody. And it worked. The Devils would outscore the Flyers in the final 2 games, in games 5 and 6, 6-2. The losing team would only have 1 goal, 5 of the 17 games. Thus, we go to Game 7. Patrick Elias scored on the power play after Keith Jones, yes, that Keith Jones, got him punished for roughing. Jason Arnott and Bobby Holik made big pass to Elias, who scored. However, later in the first period, that was when things got crazy. And that was when Lindros was skating around, dropped the pass off, boom, Scott Stevens, Kitchener. He did his job and all that. Anyway, so Scott Stevens with a kind of a late hit and a upper arm hit on Lindros sent Lindros crashing to the ice. He knew it was a concussion right there and then. Lindros had a history of concussions, including one that nearly cost him his life. Because on a road trip to Nashville the previous year, Eric Lindros was turning gray and all that. And he almost collapsed. He collapsed in his hotel room in Nashville. Fortunately, though, they managed to save his butt. So, regardless of that, the Devil, Scott Stevens, who was known for his jarring hits, and it would be the last Scott Stevens hit that would cause trouble. 2002 playoffs, he would do to Shane Willis of the Hurricanes, and 2003 to Paul Kariya in the finals. Scott Stevens was just awkward. And the worst part was no penalty on the play. It was a clean hit. Lindros had just admired the pass. Boom. Stevens got him across the ice. And that famous image of Lindros just laying on the ice, just not good. So anyway, the game had to go on. The Flyers did tie the game in the second period with Rick Tocchet. Yes, that Rick Tocchet, who's now the Jack Adams Trophy winner for Coach of the Year for what he did to connect to the Canucks in 2024. Scored from John LeClair and Andy Dalmore to make it 1-1. So anyway, it was a tight affair. These two teams did the neutral zone trap to perfection. But in the third period, with less than 3 minutes left, Jason Arnott passed the puck to Alex Mogilny, who was a Devil at that time, passed it to Patrick Elias, who put it in the net, and scored. So Elias scored 2 goals in a game 7, joining the likes of Maxim Talbot and Ruslan Fedotenko, among others. Well, later on, to be helped by those guys. But anyway, the Devils somehow won that game 2-1. Martin Brodeur is Marty Brodeur for a reason. So he won the game. Brian Boucher, try as he might, he just couldn't do it. And the Flyers choked a 3-1 series lead in the conference finals. Not the best way to lose the conference finals. Like, you're in the Final Four, you're on your way to maybe your first Stanley Cup Finals appearance in 3 years, and hopefully trying to end that slide since 1974. But the Flyers didn't. Lindros was hurt. He only played 2 minutes of that game. And it bit them in the butt. The Lindros hit would be huge. The Devils would go on to beat the Dallas Stars in 6 games in the Stanley Cup Finals, thanks to Jason Arnott's double overtime winner. So the Devils got their Stanley Cup. Larry Robinson got a Stanley Cup. Scott Stevens got a Stanley Cup. Good times by all. However, few people would realize what this hit on Lindros would do to Lindros in his career. Lindros ended up not playing at all during the 2001 season. And people were wondering if Bobby Clarke basically wanted to shop Lindros around and get rid of Lindros. It turned out that Lindros did play his final game as a Flyer in that game 7. But rumors were circulating that the Leafs were going to pick up Eric Lindros. That didn't happen. Lindros would be traded to the New York Rangers in a deal that netted the Flyers Kim Johnson, a pretty good defenseman. But the fact of the matter was that Lindros would play for the Rangers for a few years, and then once the lockout happened, he went to Toronto for a year, didn't do well, but then went to Dallas to end his career. And yes, he's not in the Hockey Hall of Fame. So the fact of the matter is that Lindros, or is he? I think he is in the Hall of Fame. But anyway, Lindros, his Flyer career just ended that day. And of course, there would be a lot of issues with Bobby Clarke and all that. And, Flyer fans would rue the name Scott Stevens. Well, lots of teams do too. So anyway, that was all. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.